The transport ship Morning Star drifted through the quiet darkness of space. Inside, 23 children sat in the passenger compartment, surrounded by soft lights and wide windows that turned the stars into something close enough to touch. Some pressed their hands to the glass. Some tried to act older than they were. Some had already started missing home before they had even left it behind. They were headed toward the core worlds, toward schools their little frontier colony could never afford to build, and the adults had called it an opportunity, but to most of the children it felt like a separation dressed up as a promise. Sarah Chin sat near the middle of the compartment with her little brother Tommy curled against her chest. He was only 5, too young to understand why their parents had kissed them goodbye on the loading platform and not followed them onto the ship. His small fingers were twisted in the fabric of her shirt. He had stopped crying a while ago, but the sadness was still there, sitting heavy in his eyes. Sarah pointed toward a blue nebula hanging in the distance like spilled paint across black velvet. "Look, Tommy," she whispered. "Isn't it pretty?" Tommy nodded because she wanted him to, not because he cared. Sarah felt her throat tighten. She was 14 years old enough that people kept looking at her like she should know how to be brave, but every kilometer that carried them farther from home made her stomach twist harder. She kept smiling anyway. That was what big sisters were for. Around them, the other children tried to hold themselves together in their own ways. Marcus, 12 and trying very hard to seem unbothered, was showing 2 younger boys pictures of the academy complex on his tablet, talking about training fields and zero-G labs with a confidence his shaking hands betrayed. Little Emma, only 6, cried into the shoulder of her older cousin, who rocked her awkwardly and kept promising the trip would be over soon. A pair of teenagers near the back were making jokes too loudly, both of them forcing laughter that sounded thin and brittle in the quiet. Captain Rivera had told them the route was safe. Neutral space. No military tension. No pirate activity worth worrying about. 3 days, he had said, and they would be in the core worlds under proper escort lanes and station traffic. Just one smooth civilian transfer from one human life to another. Then the alarm began to scream. The sound hit the compartment like a knife. Red lights flashed overhead. The floor lurched so violently that several children were thrown sideways in their seats. Tommy cried out and Sarah locked both arms around him as the ship shuddered again, metal groaning around them like something enormous had taken hold of the hull. "Everyone stay calm," one of the teachers shouted. Her voice cracked on the second word. Children screamed. A boy near the front started sobbing uncontrollably. Marcus grabbed the hands of 2 smaller kids before they could tumble into the aisle. Sarah twisted toward the nearest window and saw shapes moving through the stars. Ships sliding into view with the wrong kind of confidence, the wrong kind of silence. They were not military. They were worse. Their hulls were ugly, stitched together from mismatched armor plating and old damage. Weapons protruded from them in asymmetrical clusters. One had scorch marks all down its side. Another had half its exterior painted over in faded symbols Sarah didn't recognize. There was nothing lawful about them. Nothing civilized. They looked like scavengers wearing warship skin. The transport bucked again. Captain Rivera's voice burst through the speakers in a wash of static. "This is Transport Morning Star. We are a civilian vessel carrying children. We are unarmed. Please." The transmission cut off mid-sentence. A hard metallic thud ran through the ship. Then came a sensation Sarah had never felt before, a dragging pull that made her inner ears spin and her skin crawl. The stars beyond the window shifted sideways. Not because the Morning Star had turned, but because something else was taking control of it. A tractor beam. The realization dropped into her stomach like ice. Tommy buried his face in her chest. "Sarah. I've got you," she said instantly, though her own voice was shaking now. "I've got you." The ship stopped moving. The silence that followed was worse than the impact. No engine straining. No shouted orders from the cockpit. Just crying. Small, terrified, helpless crying from every corner of the compartment. Then came footsteps. Heavy boots on metal decking. A rhythm not human. Several sets. Voices followed, sharp and guttural, speaking in a language Sarah didn't understand. They were close. Too close. The door to the passenger compartment trembled once under some force from the other side. And then it exploded inward. The children shrieked as metal and smoke blasted across the room. Through it came towering figures in armor, blue-gray skin exposed at the joints, forearms moving with practiced speed. Their faces were wrong in a way that made Sarah's brain recoil. Too many eyes gathered around mouths lined with sharp teeth. Their weapons hummed with contained energy. They didn't storm in like raiders in a panic. They entered like professionals. One of them looked over the children and spoke in rough, broken English. Secure them all. The young ones especially. They bring best price. For 1 second Sarah didn't understand. Then she did. They were not being robbed. They were being taken. The children tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The alien soldiers spread through the compartment with terrifying speed, four arms working independently, efficiently, as if they had done this many times before. One grabbed a screaming boy by the back of his shirt and lifted him clear off the floor. Another tore a girl loose from the seat where she had wrapped herself around the safety restraints. The teachers rushed forward on pure instinct, trying to place themselves between the children and the boarding party, and one of the aliens struck a teacher across the chest so hard she flew backward into the bulkhead and dropped without a sound. Tommy screamed into Sarah's shoulder. Sarah rose anyway. She didn't think. She didn't weigh the odds. 1 second she was clutching her brother, the next she was on her feet, backing away with him in her arms, putting seats between herself and the nearest alien as if a row of civilian chairs could do anything at all. Around her, the compartment had become a storm of panic. Children were crying for their parents. Someone was calling for Captain Rivera. Someone else was praying. One of the aliens reached for Tommy. Sarah kicked it with everything she had. The alien barely reacted. One of its lower hands caught her wrist. Another seized Tommy under the arms. For 1 impossible second Sarah was suspended between them, still trying to hold on, her fingers digging so hard into Tommy's little jacket that she thought the fabric would rip before she let go. It didn't. The alien lifted both of them easily, one in each set of arms. Spirited, it said in accented English, its cluster of eyes narrowing on Sarah. Researchers enjoy this one. Sarah spat in its face. The alien only blinked, wiped the spit away with one hand and kept walking. They were dragged out of the Morning Star through a hard-sealed docking tube into the belly of the raider vessel. Sarah twisted as they crossed, trying to look back. The transport's cockpit hatch stood open. She caught one glimpse of Captain Rivera slumped over his controls, unmoving. One of the teachers was on her knees with her hands bound behind her back. Then the angle changed and the Morning Star vanished behind steel. The alien ship was colder than the transport had been. The air smelled like chemicals, oil, and something rotten beneath both. The corridors were narrow and dark, lit by strips of sickly light running along the ceiling. The walls sweated condensation in places. Everything echoed, boots, crying, the crackle of alien voices, the sound of children begging through choked breaths. Sarah kept reaching for Tommy every time the alien carrying them shifted its grip. She was afraid that if she stopped touching him for even a second, he would disappear into some other room and she would never find him again. Ahead of her, Marcus had managed to grab the hand of a younger child as he was dragged along. One of the older girls had wrapped both arms around little Emma and refused to release her even when an alien shouted. That, more than anything, burned into Sarah's mind. They were all terrified, all of them, but even now the older kids were still trying to keep the little ones together. They turned down one last corridor and entered a wide chamber ringed with metal enclosures. Not rooms. Cages. Real cages, reinforced bars threaded with flickering energy fields that snapped and buzzed at the edges. There were drains in the floor. Restraint frames bolted to one wall. Camera arrays hung from articulated arms overhead. Tables stood nearby under surgical lights, already laid out with instruments Sarah didn't want to understand. No, she whispered. The word came out too small. Too human. The aliens ignored it. They began sorting the children with brutal efficiency, opening cage after cage, shoving groups inside. Some of the children fought. Some had collapsed into shaking silence. Little Emma clung so hard to her cousin that it took 2 aliens to pry them apart, and the sound she made when they finally separated them seemed to cut through the whole room. Sarah fought hardest when they tried to pull Tommy from her. "Please," she screamed. "Please don't take him from me." Whether it was convenience or simple indifference, the alien holding them made a dismissive sound and threw them both into the same cage. Sarah hit the floor shoulder first, Tommy tumbling against her ribs, and then the energy field roared to life across the entrance in a sheet of blue light. Marcus landed in the cage beside theirs with 3 younger children clutching at him. He rolled, hit the bars by accident, and jerked back with a cry as the field snapped at his skin. "Don't touch it," he shouted, scrambling away and pulling the others with him. "Don't touch the bars." All around the chamber the children broke. Some screamed until their voices shredded. Some called for mothers and fathers who were light years away. One little boy sat in the middle of his cage and asked over and over when they were going home until his words turned into dry hiccuping sobs. Tommy pressed himself into Sarah so hard she could feel every trembling breath in his small body. Sarah wrapped both arms around him and rocked without meaning to. Tears were running down her own face now, hot and unstoppable, but she kept her voice low and steady at his ear. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here. I'm here." Outside the cages, a taller alien stepped forward wearing a long dark coat over its armor. It carried a glowing tablet in one upper hand and studied the children with open fascination, not pity. Not anger. Not even cruelty exactly. Something colder than cruelty. Interest. "Fascinating," it said in precise English. "Juvenile humans." The room quieted by degrees as the children heard that voice and understood it was important. The alien looked from cage to cage making notes. "They are smaller than expected," it murmured. "And very loud." The alien in the long coat moved closer to Sarah's cage and the room seemed to tighten around it. It was taller than the others, thinner somehow, though not in any way that made it look weak. Its coat hung in dark folds over segmented armor, and its many eyes reflected the cage lights in cold little points. A tablet rested in one hand while another adjusted a slim device clipped at its side. It looked less like a soldier and more like the sort of thing soldiers made room for. One of the armed aliens beside it shifted uneasily. "Dr. Vexith," it said, "are you certain this is wise? These are from Earth. The humans are new to the Council." Dr. Vexith did not look up from the tablet. "The humans are weak," it said. "They have no meaningful strategic projection outside their local systems. Their diplomatic standing is fragile. Their military relevance is overstated by frontier rumor. And these." Its eyes moved across the cages. "These are children." Sarah felt Tommy trembling against her, small hands gripping her shirt so tightly it hurt. She tightened her hold without looking away. Something in Vexith's tone made her skin crawl more than the soldiers had. The soldiers had taken them. This thing had plans for them. One of the younger children in Marcus's cage started crying harder, and Marcus immediately pulled him close, trying to block his view of the aliens. Sarah saw Marcus's face over the boy's head, pale, scared, furious. He met her eyes for half a second. No words passed between them but the meaning did. "Stay together." Dr. Vexith paced in front of the cages, speaking as it made notes. "Galactic authorities barely care when frontier adults disappear. Who will mourn a few missing juveniles from a half-developed species? A bureaucrat? A parent? The complaint will dissolve in procedure before it reaches anyone important." A nervous clicking passed through the soldiers nearby. Even they did not sound fully convinced. Sarah forced herself to breathe slowly. Panic wanted to take her. Panic wanted her to scream, to throw herself against the bars, to beg. But beneath the fear something else was beginning to form. A hard, stubborn little core her father would have called discipline. She could not overpower them. She could not get Tommy out by force. So she watched. She listened. She started storing everything. The exits. The guards. The cameras. The equipment. The way one of the technicians hesitated every time Vexith spoke, as if part of him already understood they were standing inside a bad decision. Vexith stopped in front of Sarah's cage and tilted its head. "This one has fight in her." Sarah stared back through tears she refused to wipe away. "Good," the alien said. "I want to test their stress thresholds while they are still uncertain. Human emotional intensity is said to be unusual. We will see if that is true or merely another frontier myth." "What are you going to do to us?" Sarah asked. Her voice shook but the words came out clear. Vexith seemed pleased that she had spoken. "Study you. Human biology. Human social bonding. Human pain response. Human breaking points. Your species is new, emotional, and politically naive. Understanding you now will be useful later." "For what?" A sound came from Vexith then, soft and ugly, almost a laugh. "For control," it said. Marcus swore under his breath in the next cage. One of the smaller girls began to sob again, and this time the sound spread through the room as if fear itself had become contagious. Tommy buried his face in Sarah's chest. She could feel his tears soaking through her shirt. "You're monsters," she whispered. "No," Vexith said. "We are practical." It moved on. Around the room, technicians began setting up more equipment. Sensor arrays rolled into position in front of the cages. Flexible cables snaked across the floor. One machine extended a set of metal restraints with quiet hydraulic precision. Another powered up a bank of monitors that began displaying streams of alien text. Cameras rotated downward one by one until every cage was under observation. The children saw it all. That was the worst part. Not knowing. Knowing they were being prepared for something and being too young, too trapped, too helpless to stop it. Tommy's breathing had turned ragged. Sarah pulled back enough to look at him. His face was wet, eyes huge and glassy with fear. "Listen to me," she said softly, holding his cheeks in both hands. "You stay with me. No matter what happens, you stay with me. Okay." He nodded because he trusted her. That trust nearly broke her. Across the room, little Emma was screaming for her mother again. A boy Sarah didn't know had crawled into the corner and curled so tight he looked half his size. Marcus had gathered the younger kids in his cage into the center, away from the bars, speaking to them in a low voice Sarah couldn't hear. He looked 12 years old and 100 years old at the same time. Sarah swallowed hard and raised her voice just enough for the nearest cages. "Listen to me." A few faces turned. "Not many. Enough. We have to stay calm," she said, though calm was the furthest thing from what she felt. "We stay together. We don't touch the bars. We don't let them split us up if we can help it." "How?" a boy asked from 2 cages over. "How do we stop them?" Sarah opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Because she didn't know. Because she was 14 and trapped and so scared her bones felt hollow. Then she remembered her father standing on the station balcony before departure, hands on her shoulders, voice firm and quiet the way it always got when he was telling the truth about something that mattered. Humans don't leave their children behind. Sarah looked at the terrified faces around her and made herself believe it. "They'll come for us," she said. "They'll come for us," Sarah said. For a moment, nobody answered. The cage room hummed with power, machinery, and muffled crying, and in the middle of all of it her words seemed too small to matter. Then Marcus looked over from the next cage, his arm still around one of the younger boys, and gave a single hard nod. "She's right," he said. The way he said it mattered. Not like a kid trying to comfort other kids. Like someone choosing to believe because the alternative was drowning. "My dad always said the fleet would move heaven and earth for civilians," Marcus continued, louder now so more of the cages could hear. "And if there are children involved, they'll move faster." A little girl near the back wiped her eyes with both fists. "But how will they know?" Sarah felt the question hit every cage at once. How would they know? The Morning Star had been taken in neutral space. No distress call had made it through. No military escort had been nearby. For all they knew, the transport had vanished into darkness and silence and no one on Earth had any idea what had happened to them. Sarah almost said something empty. Almost lied because the smaller children needed something to hold on to. But then her foot shifted inside her shoe and memory flashed through her like current. The beacon. Her father had hidden it there himself the night before departure, his broad hands working carefully at the sole while Tommy slept in the bunk above them and their mother pretended not to cry in the next room. "Emergency only," he had said. "Not if you're frightened. Not if you're lonely. Only if your life is in danger and no one else can help you. It won't last long and it burns out after one burst, so if you use it, make sure it counts." Sarah went very still. Tommy had fallen half asleep in her lap again, exhaustion finally dragging him under even through fear. That made things easier. If she moved slowly, if she kept her body turned just right, maybe the guards would think she was only adjusting him. Around the room, most of the aliens were focused on their equipment. Dr. Vexith was speaking with a technician near a bank of monitors, one long finger tracing over something on a display. This was the only chance she was going to get. Sarah bent forward and pressed her cheek into Tommy's hair, using him as cover. Her hands moved down toward her shoe inch by inch, careful not to make the bars rattle, careful not to draw the eyes of the nearest guard. Her fingers found the seam in the sole. Please, she thought. Please still be there. They were. The compartment gave under her nail. Something small and hard slipped into her palm. Her heart slammed so hard she thought the whole room must hear it. The beacon was no bigger than a coin, matte gray, light enough to feel unreal. She closed her fist around it instantly and glanced up. No one was looking. Marcus was watching her now, confusion in his face, but he said nothing. He just shifted one of the younger children to block the line of sight from his side of the room. Sarah understood the gift for what it was and loved him for it. At the front of the chamber, Dr. Vexith raised its voice. "The first observations begin at station morning cycle. We will allow the specimen's one rest phase to settle. Heightened uncertainty produces useful baseline readings. Specimens." Tommy stirred weakly at the sound and Sarah stroked his hair with one hand while her other thumb found the activation stud on the beacon. What? That was all she had. One pulse through subspace. One desperate scream into the dark. She pressed it. The device warmed in her palm and gave a single faint thrum. No light. No sound. No sign at all. If she hadn't felt it, she would have thought nothing had happened. Sarah crushed it at once, just as her father had taught her, pinning the tiny casing against the floor with the heel of her hand until the brittle core snapped. Sharp edges bit into her skin. She didn't react. She let the broken fragments slide through the gap near the bars and disappear beneath the cage where, with luck, they would look like debris from the station. Then she sat back up, heart pounding so violently her vision blurred. Marcus was staring at her. "Help is coming," she mouthed. His eyes widened. Then slowly he nodded. It wasn't certainty. It wasn't safety. It was a thread, and right now a thread was enough. The lights in the chamber dimmed to a lower cycle. Some of the machines powered down into idle states, though the cameras remained active and the cage fields continued to hum. The guards relaxed fractionally, settling into the kind of alert boredom that comes when captors believe the worst part is over. For the children, the worst part had only changed shape. Without the immediate violence of the boarding, fear settled into something colder. Some of the younger ones cried themselves to sleep. Others sat staring blankly at the floor. Emma had finally gone quiet, but the silence worried Sarah more than the crying had. Across the cages, older children shifted closer to younger ones automatically, every instinct turning inward toward protection. Tommy's eyes opened again, red-rimmed and exhausted. "Sarah? I'm here. I want Mom." The words nearly destroyed her. "I know," she whispered. "I know." To keep from falling apart, she began to sing. It was the lullaby their mother used on storm nights back on the colony. Soft, simple. A song about home lights in the dark and warm hands and morning always coming eventually. Her voice cracked on the first line. She kept going anyway. After a moment, another child joined in. Then another. The sound spread across the cages, thin and trembling but human. Children singing through tears in a room built to break them. The aliens paused at their stations, confused, listening to something they did not understand. Not defiance exactly. Not yet. But something close. High above the chamber, buried in the station's monitoring network, a technician noticed a single brief anomaly ripple through the systems and frowned at the screen. Then, deciding it was nothing, he deleted it. 17 hours later, the beacon reached Earth. It crossed relay lanes and military channels in pieces, a dying burst of encrypted emergency code skipping through subspace until it struck a defense satellite orbiting Mars. The satellite flagged it instantly and kicked it down the chain with machine urgency. By the time it hit Solar Defense Command, every authentication key on it had already turned the message from anomaly to nightmare. Lieutenant Commander James Park was on night watch when the alert came through. He had been halfway through a cup of stale coffee, drifting through patrol reports and shipping updates, when the priority alarm ripped across his console and made him spill the drink all over his desk. He swore, reached for the screen, and then forgot the coffee existed. Emergency beacon. Transport Morning Star. Last known route. Neutral space near the Krillian sector. Park's mouth went dry. He pulled up the transport file. Civilian vessel. Education transfer. Frontier origin. Passenger manifest attached. Then the count. 23 children. Ages 5 to 14. Park stared for one frozen second, then hit the emergency channel so hard he nearly broke the switch. "This is Lieutenant Commander Park. I need Admiral Chin immediately. I do not care if she is asleep. Wake her now." 3 minutes later, Fleet Admiral Catherine Chin appeared on the secure screen from her quarters, hair loose, uniform absent, expression sharp with irritation that had not yet learned what it was looking at. "This had better matter, Commander." Park sent the packet without speaking. He watched her read. It was like watching weather change over an ocean. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just the steady collapse of warmth into something colder and far more dangerous. Her eyes moved once across the manifest and stopped. "There were children on that ship?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "How long since loss of contact?" 19 hours since the Morning Star went dark. Beacon ping arrived just now. Single pulse. Then dead. Chen's jaw tightened. "Get me every scan, every signal scrape, every customs log and listening post intercept tied to that sector. Contact the ship's families. Wake Admiral Rodriguez. Wake General Thompson. Wake Ambassador Liu. Meeting in my office in 30 minutes. Park hesitated. "Ma'am, are we moving to elevated readiness?" Chin looked at him, then really looked at him. "Commander, do you have children?" He swallowed. "2 daughters, ma'am." "Then you already know the answer." The screen cut. Within the hour, Solar Defense Command was fully awake. Lights burned across orbital stations. Officers were called back from leave. Crews ran through corridors still pulling on uniforms. Ships in dock lit their reactor stacks one after another, whole berths coming alive in mechanical sequence as if the system itself had understood what was at stake and was trying to stand up faster. Veterans who had slept through pirate alarms and border disputes arrived in silence, took one look at the briefing and stopped making jokes. DEFCON 2. 423 missing children. In her office, Admiral Chin stood before a wall-sized star map with the Krillian sector marked in red. Neutral space technically. The kind of place where criminal networks nested inside disputed rocks and everyone in the Galactic Council pretended not to notice as long as the trouble stayed far enough away from trade lanes. Ambassador Lu arrived first. She took one look at Chen's face and did not waste time on formalities. What happened? Transport ship taken, Chen said. 23 children aboard. We think the Krillians grabbed it. Lu went pale. Do they understand what they've done? Chen's answer came without hesitation. No. That was the terrible part. Most council species treated offspring as a biological stage, not a sacred one. They reproduced, they raised enough to sustain continuity, and they moved on. Some abandoned hatchlings to communal systems. Some birthed young nearly self-sufficient. Some divided, budded, spawned. Very few invested what humans did. Protection. Love. General Thompson and Admiral Rodriguez entered together, both moving fast, both already in uniform. Rodriguez carried a tablet full of fleet positions. Thompson looked like a man who had skipped the walk and gone straight to anger. Tell me we're going after them, Rodriguez said. We are, Chin replied. But first we find them. Thompson braced both hands on the conference table. How long before they start doing things to those kids? No one answered immediately because they were all thinking the same thing and none of them wanted the words in the room. Study them. Move them. Sell them. Chin broke the silence. Ambassador Lu will seek council authorization for a rescue operation. In parallel, we mobilize 3 battle groups and special extraction teams. We do not wait. Lu looked up sharply. Catherine, if you move military assets into neutral space without approval, the council will call it an act of aggression. Chin turned to her. Then they should have had rules about kidnapping children. No one spoke after that. Orders began flowing at once. Intelligence assets were redirected. Listening posts shifted their focus. Informants were contacted with offers, threats, and anything in between. Every system humanity had for finding lost things in deep space bent toward one purpose. Then came the family calls. Chin insisted on being present for all of them. Sarah and Tommy's parents took the news standing side by side in colonial defense uniforms, faces tight with discipline until the details became real. Sarah's father requested immediate reassignment to the rescue force. Chin denied it. Too close. Too personal. He argued until his voice broke and the officer vanished, leaving only a father. Bring them home, he said. Chin met his eyes through the screen. I will. By morning the story had leaked. Across human space, stations, colonies, and ships woke to the same truth. 23 children had been taken. And humanity was already moving. By the time Earth's fleets were arming, Ambassador Lu was already standing before the Galactic Council. The chamber had been designed to humble visitors. Hundreds of tiers curved upward beneath a translucent dome, each level holding representatives from species older than human recorded history. Lights drifted through the air to accommodate the visual ranges of different delegates. Translation fields shimmered in layers. It was meant to feel civilized, eternal, reasonable. That morning it felt blind. Lu stood at the center podium in her formal diplomatic coat with 23 names open on the display before her and tried, one last time, to make the galaxy understand before humanity forced it to. Counselor Thrick, the mantis-like speaker, clicked his forelimbs for order. Ambassador Lu. We are informed that human military mobilization is underway in response to the disappearance of a civilian transport. Explain. A transport. The words landed like an insult. Lu kept her face still. The Morning Star was carrying 23 human children when it was taken in neutral space. We have now received a confirmed emergency beacon from that vessel's route. We believe the children are alive. A low murmur passed through the chamber. Not horror. Not outrage. Interest. One reptilian delegate leaned forward. And this justifies military escalation? Lu's hands tightened against the podium. They are children. Yes, Thrick said. Juvenile humans. Your brief mentions this repeatedly. Why? For one disorienting moment, Lu thought she had mistranslated the question. Then she looked around the chamber and understood with a fresh wave of cold anger that he was sincere. Not mocking. Not minimizing. Simply incapable of grasping the scale of the offense. Because they are children, she repeated. Because they are helpless. Because they were taken from a civilian vessel. Because they are ours. A bird-like counselor ruffled iridescent feathers. Surely your species produces more offspring. The chamber hummed with mild agreement. Lou felt something inside her go still. Perhaps, she said carefully, I have failed in previous sessions to explain human offspring investment. Human children are not independently viable. They require years of care. Constant care. They are fed, protected, taught, comforted. They are the center of our households, our planning, our futures. We do not create young and discard the weak. We build our lives around them. A different delegate made a dismissive sound. Many species possess juvenile dependency. That does not explain war mobilization over 23. Because you are still counting wrong, Lou said. That got their attention. Thrick's head tilted. Clarify. Lou drew a breath. You are counting bodies. We are counting children. Silence spread outward in confused ripples. She pressed on. To humans, the distinction is absolute. These are not replaceable units of genetic continuity. They are not inventory. They are not tomorrow's adults. They are children now, and that is enough. Any human child in danger triggers a response in us that is biological, cultural, and immediate. Another delegate scoffed. Even when the threatened offspring are not your own? Lou looked up at the tears of alien faces and let them hear the truth in her voice. Especially then. The chamber went quieter than before. Our species survived because we bonded beyond the individual household, she said. Families, tribes, settlements, nations. A child in danger is not someone else's problem to us. It is our problem. All of us. The uniform, the office, the fleet, the factory, the farm. Every human who hears this story will react the same way, first with fear, then with fury. Fury is not law, the reptilian delegate snapped. No, Lou replied. It is older than law. For the first time, some of them looked uneasy. Thrick tapped one blade gently against the arm of his chair. Ambassador, if your government is considering armed entry into neutral space, the Council must advise restraint. There are procedures. Petitions. Joint investigative panels. Lou almost laughed. Instead, she brought up the passenger manifest. 23 names in soft white text. Aegis. Colony of origin. Next of kin. These children have already been gone nearly a day, she said. By the time your panels convene, they may have been moved, harmed, sold, or killed. The word sold disturbed a few delegates. Not enough. A thin, ancient figure uncoiled from a high tier then, moving with visible effort. The chamber shifted in response. Even Thrick dipped his head slightly. The Valyrian elder. Its voice came creaking through the translators like old wood bending in cold weather. I have seen this before. Every eye turned toward it. In 6,000 years of council service, the elder continued, I have encountered only one other species with offspring instincts comparable to what the human ambassador describes. Not identical. Comparable. Thrick clicked once. And what became of that species? The old being's many dark eyes moved slowly toward Lou. They became feared, it said. Not because they were strongest. Not because they were wisest. Because every civilization around them learned a simple survival principle. The elder paused. Never threaten their young. The words settled into the chamber like a verdict. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Others stared at Lou as if seeing her species for the first time. The reptilian delegate tried to recover first. Surely this is melodrama. The humans are a minor power. New to interstellar politics. They cannot simply violate neutral space because of emotional instability. Lou looked up at him with exhausted honesty. You still think this is about politics, she said. That is your mistake. She touched the manifest again, and the 23 names expanded above her in light. Authorize the rescue, she said. Help us find those children now. Because if you do not, humanity is going to teach this galaxy what one human child is worth. The human fleet arrived in silence. 47 warships dropped out of faster-than-light transit at the edge of the asteroid field with no broadcast fanfare, no warning flare, no ceremonial demand for rite of passage. 1 second the field was empty rock and cold starlight. The next it held destroyers, carriers, assault cruisers, and the dark angular mass of the flagship Resolute, all hanging in formation like judgment made metal. On the bridge, Admiral Catherine Chin stood with her hands behind her back and watched the asteroid field turn across the main display. Somewhere inside that drifting graveyard of stone was the hidden Krillian station. Somewhere inside that station were 23 children who had already spent too long in cages. Report, she said. The tactical officer leaned over her board. Multiple power signatures buried in the field. One major structure, likely the station. 6 Krillian ships moving to intercept. They're hailing. Put them through. The face that filled the screen had too many eyes and not enough sense. It wore command insignia over scaled armor and tried for offended authority, but Chen had already seen the station marker behind him and the bloodless fear hidden underneath his bluster. Human vessels, the Krillian commander said. You are in restricted Krillian territory. State your business or depart immediately. Chen stepped forward. This is Fleet Admiral Catherine Chen of Earth's Solar Defense Force. You are holding 23 human children aboard your station. Return them now, alive and unharmed, and we will leave peacefully. You have 5 minutes. The Krillian blinked. Children? We have no. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. The commander's lip curled. You cannot threaten us in neutral space. Galactic Council protections apply here. 4 minutes. The bridge of the Resolute stayed quiet. No one shifted. No one smiled. Every officer on that deck knew what the countdown meant. They also knew that Chen was still offering the Krillians more mercy than they deserved. The commander tried laughter next, the kind weaker men used when fear had started reaching their throat. You're a new species playing at military posture. Leave now or we will remove you. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, Chen said. Use the time wisely. Bring them to the docking bay. The transmission cut. The 6 Krillian ships spread into attack formation. Rodriguez, standing at Chen's right, didn't bother asking whether they would comply. General Thompson, prepare launch teams. In the assault bay below, 60 human operators stood in black combat armor beneath the open jaws of 6 stealth shuttles. Commander Jackson Thompson moved down the line checking helmets, weapons, cutters, override rigs. These were not parade soldiers. These were the men and women sent into the places diplomacy could not reach in time. He keyed the channel. You know the priority. Children first. Anyone between you and those kids becomes an obstacle. Remove obstacles. A chorus came back at once. Copy. On the hidden station, Dr. Vexith was reviewing overnight observations from the cage room when the alarm began to pulse through the walls. A technician rushed in, breathing too fast. Human warships, sir. A large force. They are demanding release of the specimens. Vexith stared. How did they find us? We don't know. For the first time since the abduction, uncertainty touched the doctor's face. Then pride crushed it flat again. They will posture, Vexith said. They need diplomatic permission to act. Activate station defenses. Alert security. They will not risk harming their own juveniles. That sentence reached the cage room through a comm speaker left open in the hall. Sarah heard it. She sat upright at once, Tommy still curled against her side, and every child in the room seemed to feel the change in the air before they understood it. Guards moved faster. Technicians stopped pretending calm. Dr. Vexith entered with a tablet clutched too tightly, barking orders. Something had happened outside. Marcus gripped the bars of his cage before catching himself and pulling back from the energy field. Sarah, he whispered, eyes wide, is it them? She did not answer immediately because hope was dangerous and she had learned that in the last day. But then a vibration shuddered through the floor, not random, not station noise. A docking impact. Her heart slammed once. Maybe, she whispered back. On the Resolute, the timer hit 0. The Krillian ships fired first. Plasma bolts streaked through the asteroid dark and slammed into human shields in bursts of light that meant absolutely nothing. The shields held. A few officers on the human bridge glanced at their readouts almost in disbelief. The Krillian weapons were obsolete, maintained badly, and designed for intimidation, not war. Chen did not blink. Return fire. Disable only. I want those crews alive enough to answer questions later. Human targeting systems responded with surgical precision. Lances of coherent light struck engine clusters. Missile defense nodes vanished in tight blossoms of metal and sparks. Within 30 seconds, all 6 Krillian vessels were drifting, dead in space, their weapons gone, their drives silent. Not destroyed. Dismissed. Shuttles away, Thompson reported. 6 stealth craft peeled from the formation and dove into the asteroid field low and fast, hugging rock shadows, running dark. Station sensors tuned for ship-to-ship combat barely registered them before magnetic clamps locked onto the hull and cutting torches burned circles through armored plating. Then the humans came inside. The first security team on the station died without understanding what had happened. The second managed to raise weapons and lost the chance. The Special Forces teams flowed through the corridors and split formations, every turn already memorized from stolen station schematics and fast-built intelligence overlays. Doors were breached. Guards were zip-tied or dropped. Control junctions were seized. Comms were jammed. And then the door to the cage room exploded inward. For half a heartbeat, Sarah thought it was the aliens coming back to start. Then she saw the flag on the nearest shoulder. The word flashed through Sarah's mind so hard it almost hurt. Armored figures poured through the smoke with weapons raised and movements so sharp, so controlled, that for one wild instant they looked almost as frightening as the aliens had. Then one of them turned, and Sarah saw the patch on his shoulder, the colors she knew, the flag of home stamped against black armor. "We're here for the children," he shouted. "Everyone stay down. We're taking you home." The room shattered into noise. Not panic this time. Relief. Screaming, crying, laughing, relief so powerful it barely sounded human. Tommy jolted awake and began sobbing against Sarah's shoulder. In the next cage, Marcus covered his face with both hands for one broken second before dropping them and helping the smaller children back from the bars. One little girl started repeating, "They came, they came, they came," like if she stopped saying it the soldiers might disappear. The humans moved fast. 2 teams secured the chamber, rifles trained on every entrance. Another team rushed the cages with compact override rigs, plugging hard lines into alien access panels. The energy fields snapped and flared, then died one by one. Metal doors swung open. A medic knelt at Sarah's cage first. "Any serious injuries?" Sarah shook her head too hard. "They were going to do things to us." The medic's eyes changed behind the visor. The kindness stayed. Something else joined it. "Not anymore," he said. He lifted Tommy as if he weighed nothing. Another operator offered Sarah a hand. She took it and nearly fell when she stood because her legs had forgotten what solid ground felt like. Across the room, children were being gathered, checked, counted. One of the soldiers crouched to speak softly to Emma until she finally unclenched her hands from her cousin's shirt. Marcus emerged from his cage with 2 younger boys clinging to either side of him like he was a rail in a storm. Then Dr. Vexith burst into the room. "Stop," it screamed. "Those are research specimens. You have no authority." An operator turned and put a rifle on its chest. The whole room went still. The human took one slow step forward. His voice came through the helmet speaker flat and terrible. "You want to finish that sentence?" Vexith froze. "You caged children," the operator said. "You planned experiments on them. You sold them before you touched them." Vexith's many eyes flicked toward the bars, toward the children, toward the bodies of the station guards on the floor, and for the first time Sarah saw real fear on an alien face. "On your knees," the operator said. Vexith sank immediately. The humans zip-tied the doctor and the surviving technicians where they knelt. No speeches. No grand declarations. Just efficient fury held on a very short leash. Then they moved the children out, one protected cluster at a time, rifles outward, bodies inward, making themselves a wall around every small shaking survivor. By the time Sarah and Tommy were strapped into shuttle seats, the station was already behind them. The shuttle shook once as it cleared the docking route. Then again harder. Tommy looked up in alarm. What was that? The operator beside him checked something on his wrist display and answered gently, "Your people making sure nobody follows." On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Chen watched the final shuttle dock indicators turn green. "All children accounted for," Thompson reported. 23 alive. Minor injuries only. Only then did Chen let herself breathe. The relief lasted less than 3 seconds. "Multiple contacts," the sensor officer shouted. "Krillian defense fleet dropping in. 24 ships, heavy class." The view screen filled with them. Actual warships this time. Larger, sharper, arrayed in a crescent around the human formation. A command signal came through at once. The Krillian commander on screen looked furious and afraid in equal measure. "Human vessels," it snarled, "you have violated sovereign space and attacked protected assets. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Chen did not answer at once. She waited until the last shuttle had sealed and the child count was confirmed twice. Then she stepped toward the screen. "Or what?" The Krillian blinked, thrown by the softness in her voice. One of his ships fired. A missile struck a human destroyer's shields and vanished in a ripple of harmless light. Chen's face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. "Wrong choice," she said. She turned slightly. "Rodriguez." "Yes, Admiral." "Destroy them." The human fleet opened fire. It was not battle. It was erasure. Rail strikes punched through Krillian hulls like paper. Precision lasers cored engines, reactors, bridge sections. Guided missiles corrected mid-flight with machine intelligence the galaxy had never seen from humanity because humanity had never had reason to show it. The asteroid field strobed white with impacts. Ships broke apart in silence too far away to hear, spinning debris and flame into the rocks. 3 minutes later it was over. No triumphant cheer rose on the human bridge. Only silence. In the medical bay, Sarah sat wrapped in a thermal blanket with Tommy asleep against her side when Admiral Chin entered. She walked among the children slowly, speaking to each one, making sure they had names again instead of numbers. When she reached Sarah, she knelt so their eyes were level. "You're Sarah Chin," she said. Sarah nodded. "The beacon?" Another nod. Chin held out a comm unit. "Your parents are waiting." Sarah took it with shaking hands. Her father's face appeared first, then her mother's, both crying openly now, discipline gone, replaced by the kind of love the galaxy had almost failed to understand in time. Sarah managed one broken breath before she started crying too. Chin stood and looked around the room at 23 rescued children, at medics, at soldiers, at the cost she would gladly pay again. Outside, escape pods from the ruined Krillian fleet drifted through the wreckage, transmitting on every open frequency. Chin let them transmit. Let them tell the story. And across the galaxy, species that had never understood humanity finally learned the rule in language no one could misinterpret. Touch human children, and humanity will come for them. Touch them twice and there may be nothing left of you to judge.